So I've got about $25,000 that I'm not entirely sure what to do with. And I think I'm making this video for a couple reasons. Number one, first and foremost, this is not to brag by any means. And to be totally honest with you, I don't think $25,000 is that much money. Don't get me wrong, like it's a good chunk of money. You can do a lot with it. You could, buy a car, pay off a lot of debt. I'm not diminishing the amount of money it is, but at the same time, this is by no means life-changing money. The reason I want to talk about this is number one, and as always, I feel like some people might be able to relate to this. If you have some extra money on the side to maybe save or invest or pay down debt and you're not too sure what to do with it, this video is going to be for you. I want to talk about what my thoughts are in regards to this extra money that I have set aside and I'm not too sure what to do with it. And for what it's worth, and the other reason why I'm making this video is to help myself kind of talk things out loud and maybe get a better understanding of what I think I should do with this additional money. Now, a little bit of a backstory. If you've seen any of my videos, you've probably come to learn that I've always been a saver, always worked a lot, always worked multiple jobs, started investing at a young age. And more recently, I moved out of my parents' place last year, got my own apartment, moved to a totally different state, about 10 hours away from my family. So a lot has gone on in the past year, but also just in the past like 5 to 6 years, I've just been hustling and grinding and saving money. And now I'm at a point where I'm starting to have, a savings, a really, solid portfolio for someone in their 20s, in my opinion, at least. And I'm starting to get to the point where I want to make sure I'm using my money to the best of my ability and getting the most out of it. So a little bit more of a backstory. I'm debt free. I have no kids. I have very minimal expenses. My monthly expenses are under $2,000. I split my rent with my girl. We split a lot of the expenses like food and utilities and things like that. So my expenses are very low. And this 25 grand that I have, it's not my entire savings. It's a portion of it. And I've always been one to, I think, oversave. I've always had an emergency fund that I think was probably bigger than it needed to be, but it gives me that peace of mind knowing that if something bad happened or if an emergency popped up or, if I don't like my job and I want to leave it, like I have that money set aside. But with all that being said, the fact that I have a portfolio that I could liquidate if needed, and pairing that with the fact that my expenses just went down because my girlfriend did just move in with me, I don't need a massive emergency fund the way I did maybe a year ago when I moved out of my parents' place without a job lined up and got a new apartment. You know what I mean? So the situation has definitely changed. And what I'm trying to figure out is I'm not too sure what I should do with this extra 25 grand. So this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of half of my cash savings. And again, I know that that's beefy. You don't need that much in savings, but again, it was more so for peace of mind more than anything. But again, now that my situation's a little different, I'm thinking about using this money elsewhere. So as I mentioned before, I do have a stock portfolio. I do have a Roth IRA, and I do still have a pretty decent amount of money in savings. So the question becomes, what do I do with this money? And what kind of risk am I willing to go ahead and take on with it? Because, just a year ago, as I mentioned, I was pretty much not making any money. I had just quit my job and I was getting ready to go ahead and move, or I was getting close to that point where I was getting ready to go ahead and move. So I was still making money about a year ago at this point, but not for much longer. But now, fast forward a year later, I have a job with a steady income. And I don't need to have such a beefy emergency fund because, again, I have that steady income. I am splitting expenses with my girl. And there's just not as much of risk when it comes to my personal finances. So even if I were to go ahead and take this money and invest it elsewhere, I would still have roughly about 2 years worth of expenses saved up. And even that is still a beefy emergency fund. Like most people recommend 3 to 6 months. I definitely wouldn't go less than 6 months. I'm more of like a 6 months to a year guy, but I've always gone even above and beyond that. But again, even if I invested this 25 grand and needed an emergency fund if I lost my job or whatever the case may be, I'd still have about 2 years worth of expenses based on my current situation, splitting rent with my girl and what my current expenses are. So the fact that my situation has changed has allowed me to go ahead and be comfortable with, shaving down my emergency fund and using this money elsewhere. But again, now the question becomes, what am I going to go ahead and do with this money? What am I going to invest it in? How often am I going to invest it? Am I going to do a bulk investment, or am I going to dollar cost average? So I definitely don't want to go ahead and do a bulk investment. It's just too risky in my opinion. If the market were to go ahead and drop right after I invested a full 25 grand in the market, I would not be happy. And I know myself, I would definitely regret that and it would bother me. So I'm leaning much more towards dollar cost averaging this money into my brokerage account. And then to be more specific, I'm kind of weighing two options. I'm thinking about doing maybe 2 grand per month for the next year, or 1 grand per month for the next 2 years. If you guys were in my position, let me know in the comments below what you think you would do in my situation. Would you go 2 grand a month for the next year, or would you play it a little safer and go 1 grand a month for the next 2 years? I'm very curious what you guys would do. But continuing back to the discussion here, I think I would be much more comfortable and happy if I were to take one of these dollar cost averaging approaches rather than just a lump sum investment into the market. I do believe there are studies that show if you do a lump sum investment, you'll probably end up doing better in the long run. But again, while the numbers are important in personal finance and investing, I am big on like the mental and emotional aspect of it too, like understanding your risk tolerance and doing what fits your tolerance best. So if that means I lose out on a little bit of gains over the course of, the next 3 or 4 or 5 decades, but I have that peace of mind knowing that I didn't do a lump sum investment and then the possibility of the market dropping, I'm willing to risk that little bit of extra return just to have a peace of mind and be able to sleep better at night knowing that if the market were to crash in 2 months, but I was dollar cost averaging, then I would have the ability to go ahead and do a lump sum investment and get more aggressive, rather than if I did a lump sum now and the market crashes in 2 months, then I don't really have much more money to go ahead and invest when the market's down unless I tap into my savings or other forms of assets, which is not something that I want to do. So I think sort of where I'm at is I definitely want to go ahead and do dollar cost average. I'm not sure if I want to do it over 1 year or 2 years. And I pretty much plan on investing it all in VOO, just the S&P 500. I may throw a little bit into Tesla. I am a big fan of Tesla. So if that drops a bit, I may start putting some money in there slowly but surely. But other than that, it's going to be a pretty boring dollar cost average, every month for 1 year or every month for 2 years is really what I'm leaning towards. And this isn't going to change anything in regards to my regular investments. Like I'm still going to be consistently investing in my brokerage as well as my Roth with my normal income. Nothing's changing with that at all. This is just going to be an additional investment on top if I do choose to pursue this strategy. So it's not set in stone yet. I'm still thinking about it and weighing out my options. But as I mentioned, definitely let me know in the comments below. Like if you had an extra 25 grand, you had a fully funded emergency fund, no debt, you really didn't have much expenses, what would you do in my situation? Would you dollar cost average? Would you do a lump sum? Would you dollar cost average over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And what would you invest in? Definitely let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear that. But that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. I appreciate you checking in. If you are new here, I post every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, I post all kinds of content about personal finance, life experiences, really just anything I feel like talking about, I throw it over some gameplay for you guys. So if you do like this kind of content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.